My name is Anne, and I'm the head of chapter for Products That Counts here in Seattle. And if I want to see, for who is tonight, if it's your first time at Products That Counts, wow, welcome. I'm just kind of curious too, who in the audience is new to Seattle as well? Okay, great. Look around, because Seattle can be a tough nut to crack sometimes. Very nice people, but it still can be a tough nut to crack. So look around, and then you see that there are a lot of other people who are new to the community. So thank you for being here. So Products That Counts was founded in 2014 by SC Modi. She can't be here tonight, but she's in the Bay Area, and she founded Products That Counts out of a desire to build a global platform for product leaders and innovators across the globe. So we have chapters here in Seattle, London, New York, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, and then we'll be growing to LA and Boston soon. So if you're any of those places, feel free to look them up. And so we look forward to learning from our executives here each month. So I'll introduce Ash in just a moment, but I wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Amplitude and Particle, to start with. Anyone here from those companies tonight? You should totally check them out if you have a platform that uses data or needs some other mechanism to communicate with your users. Both of them are minded in a way that aligns to us. We're a nonprofit, and we like what they do with the company. And mostly we want to say a very big thank you to Zillow. So I'm going to introduce Justin. Thanks.
Thanks, Ann. I think it's a slightly larger crowd than Pearl Jam, right? On the street? It's awesome. Super excited here. Thanks for coming. If you need anything, let me know. I'm Justin. We also have our recruiters here. But in general, great you're here. Super excited. I think this is our sixth Products That Count. Yeah, so we're just really privileged to host. So excited to hear from Ash. But we are definitely hiring. So if you're a PM or tech role of some kind or just anything, Zillow's a really cool company. We're disrupting the real estate market. It's a great place to work. Read the Glassdoor reviews. I love working here. So if you have a question about a job, you can come talk to me or one of our recruiters. But yeah, thank you, Ann.
Yeah, thank you. And related to that, after the presentation tonight, people have a chance to do a shout out. And so I mentioned that before the event. So if you're looking for a job or you're running a study or you're hiring as well, it's a great time to come up. And even if you'd like to have a carve out, hey, let's grab a beer and talk more about this, next Friday or whatever it might be, it's a great place to come and chat out as well. But I want to also thank the volunteers who came out tonight, so thank you very much. And I then move on to introducing Ash. So thank you very much for being here tonight. A little bit about Ash, did some digging. He's an innovator, so you have 6 patents. It's quite impressive. And also a technologist, so building platform, cloud services with Azure, and then also consumers startup. In addition to that, because that's not enough, that's very impressive there, also a Techstars mentor, so you give back to the community, and then beyond that, just civil-minded and very active in organizations that take care of people and civil liberties here and just protect people around the world. So just really impressed and very interested in learning from you tonight, so thank you very much. I'll just let you take it away.
Thank you very much. I think all that means is I'm really old. All right. Well, thanks for this warm welcome. Really happy to be here. My name is Ash Wahi. I'm a product manager at Snapchat, and you will see a lot of Bitmojis. I, recently discovered the Chrome plugin for Bitmojis, and now all my slides have Bitmojis. I make really terrible slides. This, sort of. The topic I wanted to kind of focus on today was about building platforms, especially product managing platforms, and what's kind of unique about them. But before I kind of dive in, I wanted to take a moment to also thank Products That Count. I think they've done an excellent job building this community, both in Seattle and kind of elsewhere. If you haven't checked out the website, I suggest, there were a few new people here. Do that. There's a lot of great speakers with great content that I have kind of, over the weekends kind of listened to and learned from. So do give that a go. A little bit about myself. As I said, I'm product manager at Snap. I lead a team that builds our core ads API, our ad review and integrity systems, our payment platforms, and our internal tools. Joined Snap a year ago and have been super happy. We're building a lot of stuff here in Seattle, which a lot of people actually don't know that we have an office in Seattle. So it's mainly an engineering office. We occupy, I believe now, 3 floors in a building right next to Pike Place. And building all kinds of things, infrastructures, ad platform, the team that I work in, location, you name it. So if you're interested in learning more about what we are doing here in Snap Seattle, please, come by and have a chat. Can anybody guess what these other products are? Anyone? Any takers? Nope. Visual Studio. That's right. Okay, from Microsoft. That's right. So I started my career at Microsoft working, in the Visual Studio team back in the day. Then kind of moved on to .NET Framework, where I built APIs on top of our kind of queuing and pub/sub infrastructure, really boring stuff. Then kind of transitioned from there to Azure. This is before Azure was actually called Azure, and started this small project called Service Bus. Which, I still kind of, I'm in touch with some of the friends there, and it's doing awesome. Then said, I've lived a lot of my life in infrastructure. Let me do something completely different. And this was still at Microsoft, so I joined the Windows Phone team and kind of worked on the Windows Phone Store, but mostly on the developer side. So getting, developers to easily give us their applications, ingestion services, review services, etc. Then I said, okay, an opportunity at Facebook showed up. This was Facebook Seattle. Then I worked, in the Facebook Seattle office on Open Graph API. And then after that, on the Facebook ads platform. So as my 4-year-old would say, there is a pattern here. I worked on a lot of API stuff, a lot of platform stuff. And I've tried from time to time to actually go completely consumer facing, and I find myself coming back to it. So I felt that, when Ann and I were originally talking about, hey, what should we talk about? I was like, look, this is what I do. This is what I've done. So let me just talk about how building platforms is just unique, or what have I learned as I've kind of gone through many, many years of doing this stuff. A little bit about Snapchat, in case you don't know what Snapchat is. It's a great app. I was not a super user when I joined Snapchat. I had it installed on my machine, on my phone. But since I've joined Snapchat, obviously we use it a lot internally to communicate and have fun. It is a very unique app. It opens directly into the camera, which is very unique when you look at other social media platforms that are out there. And the camera itself is fantastic. I mean, I use the camera a lot individually just to take snaps, apply filters on them, apply lenses on them, of my kid. So it really is a pretty unique experience that I don't think I've seen, at least in other applications. You swipe left on the camera and you go to this screen, which is essentially our messaging app. This is a fun way to stay connected with your friends and family and kind of live in the moment. And we say this last phrase a lot internally at Snap, which is live in the moment. We really believe that it's all about what you're communicating and in the moment, and that's really where a lot of value gets created. And then if you go back to the camera and then swipe right, we take you to our famous Stories products. And this is where you can look at stories of your friends that your friends have posted, maybe some publishers that you've subscribed to, and some content that we think you might be interested in following. So if you haven't, given it a shot, give it a try. I think the camera itself is pretty unbelievable. So enough of the setup. Let's kind of get into this. I wanted to kind of start this talk up by talking a little bit, going a little meta on what is really a platform. And there's a lot of literature on the web about this. There's a lot of people with lots of opinions, a lot of different definitions of what a platform is. And I think a lot of people here have probably a very good idea of what it is. So, in order to sort of try and just calibrate the rest of the talk, I said, okay, let's start here. One of the best, as I was kind of preparing for this talk, the best layman explanation of a platform that I came across was, it is a stable structure that lifts things up, which I thought was really simple, something I could explain to my mom if I ever had to, yet it kind of captured the spirit of what a platform is, at least, the way I've thought about platforms as I've kind of built them over the many years. So then I said, okay, well, if with kind of that in mind, if I were to kind of think about, the common services that we all use and kind of classify them as platform or not platform, what would that world look like? And this is kind of what I came up with. Any comments on this? I don't know if this is right, by the way, but this is kind of what I thought if I were to take, think about a Windows Azure, Windows Azure or AWS platform. I think they really truly are platforms versus, services such as Netflix and Spotify, where you go to these services for very specific experiences. Any quick kind of comment on this? Like, this is kind of sniff right, kind of. I mean, I didn't draw all the different gradients within, each of the halves. The one thing, that as I was doing this, I was like, and I had actually come across a lot of different write-ups on the web which tried to do this type of thing. And I was like, it's really easy to do this. Take something, define something in your head and put this, but is it really accurate? My slide says that Netflix is not a platform. I'm pretty sure there is a team at Netflix that's called the Netflix platform team. My slide says Spotify is not a platform. I'm pretty sure there's a PM in Spotify whose whole job is to make APIs for partners to connect. So I think these definitions, I think they're kind of useful directionally. But at the end of the day, it really is, locally, what are you trying to do, right? What are you trying to build? And kind of use that. Is that a platform? It could be a platform for the adjacent team that you work with every day. It might not be a platform in some, when Bill Gates talks about platforms, but it might really might have all the characteristics of a platform that are true. So with that kind of in mind, I said, okay, let me try to at least give it a shot as to what a platform is. So platforms enable solutions at scale. I think at scale part is the most important thing here, which is you build a platform and the scaling of that end user experience that you will end up building on it, the platform takes care of it, at least the good platforms. Provide fundamental mission-critical capabilities. This, I think, is really key. I think the mission-critical part, even though the bolding is all off, the mission-critical part is the key part here, which is when you think about an end-user experience, and then you have to say, okay, if you were to also at that point have to develop every part of the infrastructure to enable that experience, my bet is you will spend 80% of your time building the infrastructure and not the actual end-user experience that you had in mind. So I think this is where the platform can provide you with all of those building blocks that you need to develop that experience. Sustains ecosystems. Big word, right? Ecosystems. I think this is also a key point in that I was trying to kind of do this analysis in my head, which is, can a platform exist without an ecosystem? I really couldn't come up with one. And then I said, what about internal platforms? Internal platforms don't have ecosystems. Sure, not an external ecosystem, but there are probably partner teams that depend on that thing. And maybe then it's really a definition of, is it an external ecosystem or an internal ecosystem? So really about, the platform being kind of the center of the ecosystem that it's trying to maintain and sustain, I think is super key. And then finally, and very quickly, the drive economic value upstream. And this is, I'm just going to talk about something that Bill Gates said. You should look up this guy called Ben Thompson from Stratechery. I think most people probably will know. He did a really good talk on platforms and aggregators. There's a short video, 20 minutes, watch it. But really, the point here was the platforms, the services that get built on top of the platform, they generate more economic value than what the platform actually captures. I think that is a very key distinction. And, as I said, go watch that talk. And he talks a lot about, well, in that world, in that definition, what's a Google, what's a Facebook, and what are really truly platforms. So that's kind of the meta that I wanted to kind of set up with. Now, narrowing down to what kind of PMs, us PMs do on a day-to-day basis or a quarter-to-quarter basis, what I asked myself was, okay, so what's unique about PMing platforms, right? So, we do goals and strategy setting, we do customers and MVP, all of these things, and there are definitely more things that PMs do. So I said, okay, let me pick these dimensions, and across these dimensions, try to think through how is my job as a platform PM different, not better, not more complex, not easier, just different from what a PM who's building an end user experience. How does that kind of look like? So I'm going to go through each one of them very quickly. There are wordy slides. Hopefully you can kind of read them offline also. So goals and strategy, what are the best practices for setting goals and strategy for a platform? The one thing that I immediately came to was compared to end user experiences, platform metrics, at least the ones that I have ever worked with in my career, have been multidimensional. What I mean by that is every time we talked about usage of our platform, we immediately also talked about stability. Like we couldn't look at say, hey, usage is awesome, we are killing it, and then guess what? All engineers are working 12-hour shifts, can't go home because they're having to sustain this awesome usage. Similarly, adoption. With adoption, we also always looked at health. Like, how is this platform getting used? Is it getting used by just one type of customer for one type of workload, or is it more of a diverse usage? So, again, take that for what it's worth. Trying to actually come up with more multidimensional metrics for platforms at least worked for me as I was kind of developing them and measuring success against them. The strategy of platforms is also kind of ecosystem focused. Like you have to connect yourself with, what am I really trying to build here? What kind of partners do I want who are going to build on top of the platform? How do I want them to be successful? What am I going to do to make those people successful? And the main kind of tricky part here is that it's a sticky decision. Sticky as in you make that decision, you pick a strategy for a platform. You can change it. Obviously, you can change any strategy, right? It's software at the end of the day. It's just harder to change it because for some reason, it's just harder to reset expectations with partners who have built on your system and integrated with you in such a deep way. Consumers also, by the way, you change a consumer experience and consumers reward, right? But first, it's easier for the technology provider to do that, whereas when you're building a platform, it's just harder. And this last point, I think, is really kind of unique. And I don't know if you guys have experience with this, but I would suggest you to kind of, when you kind of go back to your products, kind of think about this. So when we were developing kind of the ad platform, the self-service ad platform at Snapchat, we knew that, okay, we'll have an auction system, and on top of that, we will have first-party native tools. But we knew that it was going to take a long time to build that whole native tool experience, but we had the auction and everything ready. So we kind of released it through our APIs and had partners kind of built towards it. So when partners started building on top of the APIs while we were developing our native interfaces, we started to get A, demand into our system, and then B, we started to kind of learn about where the bugs were, what the feedback was, whether our abstractions were actually right or wrong. So it all depends on what kind of a product you own or you're building. Think about, hey, can I actually make part of this platform or all of this thing into a platform and give it as an API while I develop the end-to-end experience? Maybe somebody else can start using it and I can start learning as to where the kinks are, as opposed to waiting for an end-to-end experience. Now, it may or may not work for your product, but think about it. I've seen other companies kind of do that too, and it was really valuable. So, just very quickly, kind of the takeaways when I kind of looked at, all of these things and had all these thoughts, I was like, okay, don't think of goals in a silo. Think of them as multidimensional. I kind of talked about that. Don't commit prematurely. This is typically very easy to write on a slide, really hard to do. Have options, maybe run long betas, have customers that are kind of aligned with you. And then force trade-offs. So this is about the discipline itself. So as a platform PM, you have a lot of power, right? Because there are other PMs in your org that depend on what you're building. So they'll come to you and say, hey, Ash, I'm building X, can you give me Y? I'm building Z, can you give me this? And obviously you can't do all of them at least. So you as a platform PM have a lot of power to force a strategic discussion. Like, what is really important? And a lot of people shy away from it in their roles as PM. So I would suggest it's okay. It's okay to say, look, I can't do all of these things, or at least on the timelines that you're asking for, either the timelines move or let's have a broader discussion about what's truly important. Let's talk about customer and MVP. So it's just generally, challenging to know who your customer is, pick your customer, because then they ask you for all kinds of things. And then it's challenging to come up with the right MVP, right? Everybody talks about MVP now, puts MVP, but really the challenge is, what is an MVP? And think about it, right? An MVP for a mission critical system. Wow, is that really viable? What does that mean? So let's kind of quickly look at this. As I said, platform customers, they just expect more. They will blog about you. They will threaten to leave you. If you don't give them features that they want, they will do all kinds of things, right? They're noisy by definition, because they have now bet their business, their product, their vision on you. Segmenting customers, with diverse requirements is just generally hard. And as I was doing this, I was like, man, how many offsites have I sat in where we took sticky notes and put them in who the customer is, or did Kano analysis, Pareto analysis, all these kinds of analysis, and you come back to your desk, and the first email comes in, this customer archetype, which you had prioritized really low, will spend $10 million on your platform if you do fine. And you're like, sure, I'll do it. And then, and then you're like, okay, so, what do you do with platforms? How do you kind of decide? And then finally, MVPs, right? MVPs are, I think from a process and a concept perspective, is pretty similar for end user experiences and platforms. I think the difference is you also need to think about MVP for the support documentation, MVP for your, for any of the other partner things that you will end up doing. So the key takeaways here for me were find customers with similar needs. So, and try to abstract their requirements, right? Have their requirements in abstract and then say, okay, out of this cohort, which of these customers are willing to evolve with me? Because my platform, and if this is a new platform, my platform is going to evolve. Which of these customers are okay saying, I'll go on this journey with you? It's a hard thing to do, but if you do it, then I think you have a really tight and fruitful connection. Be the customer. I'm sure you've heard this a million times, set up dog food, etc. Interestingly enough, a lot of PMs still don't do it. So if you're a platform PM, build on top of your platform, because I think that's the best way to really know what your customers are going through. And then the last point is be wary is the wrong word. When you bring a really big customer onto your platform and you're really excited about it, like we were 2 months ago, just keep in mind that they can take you down. So we had a large customer come to us and say, hey, I'm going to start spending, I'm going to integrate with your API. I'm going to start pushing spend through your platform. We're like, wow, awesome. Beers, all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden, next day, our dashboards broke. Because, dashboards that used to typically say, 800 objects a day, all of a sudden started saying 20,000 objects a day on that one day. We hadn't implemented paging in our system. So everything started to crawl because these kind of customers just have different expectations, right? And they want, search capability. Like, we hadn't thought about search. Well, they're like, yeah, I've got 1,000 objects in your system. I need to search them. So just be aware that they can take you down. Give them a different instance. Make separate databases for them. Just keep that in mind that you may have to do that. Yes.
One last point. This may be very contextual. Sure. Netflix is one of it.
That's right.
AWS learned a lot from that even the Amazon.com scale was less than what Netflix's scale was. So it may not be, and we were building the platform, another school of thought that the biggest customer can help you make the biggest investments. So what do you think? It's kind of a middle ground between the two.
Do you want me to take that right now?
Sure.
This is a great question. Let's get back to it, because this is these are the trade-offs we go through, essentially. All right. So and I only have a few more slides. Last couple of them are Bitmoji. So priorities and roadmap. Quite possibly, I find it's the hardest thing to do, and primarily because I'm saying no a lot to people, and and they don't want to hear no from me. And they want me to say, yep, I can schedule this next month. And I'll say, no, I cannot, because look at my roadmap. It's already full. I don't know how to deal with this except for just have empathy, like be polite to them and explain to them that why, their feature is not something I'm going to prioritize as kind of the platform that they depend on. The second one is interesting, which is block or run fast. I used to work on Windows, and getting a feature approved and shipped in Windows was almost impossible. Like there were gates after gates after gates, and I don't mean Bill Gates, but they were just gates, feature bars you had to hit, approvals you needed to do, and we all, I'm pretty sure, kind of a lot of people make fun of that, like, oh, Microsoft's so slow. But there was a reason for that. The reason was integrity of the operating system. If every PM in Windows had a couple, 3, 5, 6 features that they wanted to build in a release cycle, that's like you're talking about like 5,000 different features. And that's just the operating system is never going to ship. So that's one posture a platform PM can take, which is I'm the gatekeeper. I'm going to block everything. My default answer is no until you prove to me what the value is of this feature. At Snap, I'm trying to take. I have a different posture, and that is. I think partly it's because we are a young platform, and it's not an operating system, right? It's an ad platform that services, which changes a lot of things. But really, it's about, can I anticipate their requirements? Can I build something next month? Maybe they don't need it now, but maybe they'll need it, 3 weeks from now, or a month from now, or 2 from now. So that's like, I'll go ahead. I'll be the scout, because they don't know what they need. So, use that as, be intentional, I think was my point here, was like, when you do, if you have a platform, be intentional. Which role are you playing? Because your stakeholders get really confused when one day you say, nope, nothing going in, and the third day you actually let everything in, and they're like, it's not principled. Tech debt. Just make sure your roadmaps always have it. When a junior engineer comes to you and says, kind of timidly that, hey, I think we have a problem in the system, listen to them. You may not listen to them now, but in like 4 weeks, something will break, and then you'll like, I should have listened to them. So just plan at it. You don't have to like make whole milestones, which Microsoft started doing towards the end was just about quality. You can just have every month, every whatever cadence your roadmaps are on, you can do a couple 3 things here and there about infrastructure improvements, and I think that goes a long way. So very quickly, don't try to make everyone happy. Just have empathy when you say no. Growth over stability is almost always the wrong trade-off. Stability always trumps if you're the platform. Keep your roadmaps transparent. So we do this in our team where, since we are the kind of the ads API, the core data model, every month, middle of the month, we start a quip, and we add all the PMs in the org on that quip, and we started planning what we're going to do in the next month. So that's very asynchronous communication method gives every PM kind of like, hey, now I can see what they're building, how their plan is going to evolve, their roadmap for next month. And they feel a little bit of, okay, I was part of it. This wasn't a black box. So do that. Finally, this is my last kind of section on this, which is growth. I think growth strategies for end user experiences and partner platforms are very similar conceptually. I think the differences are that things get magnified. If you're a platform if you have friction in your workflow in end user experiences, that's one thing. But then if you have friction in your platform, it just impacts everyone. Everyone pays the tax. Lack of clear ownership, I see that a lot with platform PMs. Like, who owns the growth? Is it me? Is it the person that I'm building for? What? I'm getting, my API gets called 1 million times a day. I'm winning. And the app that's actually calling that API 1 million times a day is not meeting any of its goal. So who is the owner? Drive that discussion, be clear. And people hear from Amazon, right? Single-threaded ownership. It's very critical, especially in platforms. Ecosystems play a big role, so enable them to grow for you. We've done many sessions with our partners where we tell them about how to talk about our platform, what the narrative is, what are the things you need to emphasize, what are the things you don't need to emphasize, and your XFN teams can take care of a lot of these things, right? Your PMM team, your marketing team can kind of help you. So, just to kind of wrap up this battery of different things about platforms, really, I think there are 4 kind of key things, if you will, that I thought if you were to take away what you should, set platform goals and strategy that drive the ecosystem success. Like, at least talk like that, because even talking like that will force you to think about the ecosystem, right? And if you do it enough times, you will finally figure out the right formula where actually this is the right ecosystem goal versus, just a very specific, my API is up, 99.9% of the time. Like, that is a good goal, but just that goal in itself, I'm not sure if it's success. Co-develop platform with customers who share your vision. They will just help you, and they will evolve with you. They will, try to kind of clear roadblocks for you. So just find that customer or set of customers. Stability over growth. Already talked about that. Develop empathy for your fellow stakeholders who come to you for requests, and you have to say no. Explain to them why. And then finally, align incentives with ecosystem to accelerate growth. Wow, sounds like one of those buzzword type of things. Basically, help work with your ecosystem. They can accelerate you. They can go to markets that you have not yet gone to. There are a lot of benefits to this, and you can push on your partner teams to do that. And I think that was kind of the last slide. Thank you very much. How am I doing on time? Okay.
Now we'll open up for Q&A. And we might as well start with
Yes.
Thank you. Great presentation, Ash, and I love the emojis.
That would be like, if everything goes wrong, this might save it.
I'm going to steal that, but I think great presentation. I think this you talked about the platform and about worrying about the great whales. One school of thought for Amazon AWS stories success has been customers like Netflix and Tinder and Airbnb actually scaling the platform so much that it was not even the first parties use it that much. And that brought them growth and new set of avenues. And the second school of thought is yours. It really is very contextual on what you're really trying to build. Right. So what do you?
Yeah, so by the way, I mean, just to be very clear, that was one type of thing. It's not the thing that I say will work in every case. I think that type of a question, okay, we're going through something very similar right now. Should we make something that applies very broadly to a lot of customers, and a lot of customers can come in? They may not drive a lot of revenue, but we'll get a lot of usage in our system. Or go after maybe a handful of customers. We know they're huge, they're powerful, they will drive a lot of revenue, they will ask us to do things that we haven't done before. Maybe that's okay. So when I look at these two statements, if I characterize them right, it depends on your goal. Like, what is it that you're trying to drive? Because certain customer types will drive, like these big guys, they will drive usage, they will, pay your bills. So if you're a startup, you should pick the people who give you. Actually, I forgot to say that I had it in my notes, which is if you can't find the customer who will co-develop with you, find the person who will give you money. So, at startups, I think a lot of the thinking around startups is find that customer who's going to pay your bills, because you need to pay your bill, and go with them. Like, have one customer as opposed to trying to boil the ocean. So it really goes back to the goal. And I think the trouble happens when they ask you for things that were not on your roadmap and you don't think align with what you want to do. I am personally of the mindset that having somebody committed, dollars to me, I think are a very big commitment when a customer makes to you. And I think if they are 80% aligned with your strategy, I think you should go with it. Because big customers will scale your platform in ways that you hadn't really imagined. So it really depends on the goal. Like, that's the general answer.
Great. Next question.
XFN, what does that stand for?
Cross-functional team. So mostly internal, like your PMM, your marketing team, your PMM team, other PMs that you work with.
Ash, can you talk a little bit about the metrics? Like, so as you talk about the goal of the Snap platform, what are the measures or metrics that you guys talk about internally to say you're successful?
Right. So I'm part of the ads team, the revenue team at Snap. So there is a goal. It's called revenue. So I'm actually pretty happy that I'm working on a product where the goal is really very clear. When I used to work on the .NET framework, the goals were not clear, right? The goals were, we're talking circa 2004 or something, there was J2EE, REST was kind of on the horizon. It was more about developer mindshare, how to get web programming, service models and et cetera. Nate isn't here. Nate and I used to work on those things. So the goals were very unclear. And it was some of the best sort of technical people I ever worked with. But because those goals weren't clear, we struggled. We built a lot of stuff. And it was very hard to see, okay, which customer is going to use it? I think we went too broad in that sense. For Snap, specifically for our team, it's the app platform, so it's revenue. That's kind of the one metric that we move. And then other things are, as you would expect, things around, we have metrics around onboarding, how many people land on our website and actually start an ad campaign, how many people drop off at different sort of parts of the funnel. So the run-of-the-mill, kind of metrics that you'll see, we have all those dashboards. And health of our ad system, how much inventory, how much demand, those types of things.
You touched on it a little bit, but I'm hoping you can talk more about how you coordinate work across the various teams. So processes, tools, strategies that you use.
Yes. So one of the things we kind of mentioned there was kind of our road mapping. And my now belief after working so many years in and having used, I think, every tool, project management tool known to mankind, is that I think the trick about process is that first, you have to believe in the process, and then you have to just keep doing it. And if you keep doing it, then you will eventually fix all of the bugs in that process, and then other people will also start to use it. So one of the things that, and I have never really been a process guy, but one thing that has, for some reason, stuck at Snap over the last year is this monthly cadence that we do, which is, again, we can do very fancy things, but we start with a quip. And I don't know if guys know what a quip is. It's basically like Google Sheets, Google Doc, and we start putting, for all of our different functional areas, all the PMs on my team will go say, hey, next month I'm going to do this, 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 this. And all the engineering managers are on it on day one. All the other our PM stakeholders that work with us and depend on us are on it on day one. So they literally see how we are kind of in real time over 2 weeks, sorting things out, prioritizing things, and and other PMs will go add their things like, hey, I want this, in the doc. So it's a really asynchronous way of doing it, as opposed to what I've seen done in the past, also successfully, by the way, where everybody sits down and actually tries to map the timeline. Since this is only a month, I think people are okay with this sort of asynchronous process. Obviously, if you were doing planning over, a quarter or a half, then I think you need a few more formal processes. And for that, we do have that. We come up with more kind of goals. We're actually very recently aligned ourselves with the OKR methodology, which was, I think, started at Google. And I actually like that a lot because it's very goal-based. Like, again, with all of these methodologies, I was kind of making fun of Kano, et cetera. All these methodologies are actually good. It's just that they start getting used in perverse ways, and they start becoming a burden on the product manager. And that's when nobody cares. Like, if I have to spend half a day, putting blue, green, yellow statuses, then it's not my job, or that's not what I want to do. So the OKR methodology is also really good for, like, I think we're doing it on a every half basis. Like, what's the goal for this half, and what are the key results we're looking for? And then each individual PM, really drives their own roadmap. We do it monthly.
You did.
Yeah, no problem. So one of the things that I've discovered building platforms is that you can't anticipate how every user is going to use it. And so can you talk to a particular instance where somebody was either for perverse reasons or just completely unintentionally abusing the platform in a way that you didn't anticipate, and then kind of how you moved forward from that?
That's a great question. So abuse can be both, hey, I didn't want them to use it this way, right? And they're using it this way.
Yeah.
I think the first thing is how important are their customers, right? Like I was talking about this big customer that we were, onboarding. I mean, they're using our system, they're dumping everything into our system. Like, this is not a database, but that's what they're doing. And because they're like, I don't care, I expect your system to handle this type of load, et cetera. So what we do is, we talk to them. If it's no, then obviously there are cases when you actually don't know who that is, which is kind of hard. But I think in most cases, when somebody is using your system in a way that's showing up on some radar, some dashboard, I think you need to talk to them and say, what are you really trying to accomplish here, right? And if you cannot natively support what they are trying to accomplish, and as a result, they're having to do what they're doing, then clearly there is a solution path. You can talk to them, build whatever they want, et cetera. That's one way. The other way platforms sort of constrain usage, or at least try to, try to at least force people into specific paths, is things like rate limiting, like APIs especially, where, okay, you're going to call my API, but I'm not going to let you do, X QPS or Y QPS. So that's another sort of method. Another method is actually having limits in your system, well-documented limits in your system, that you can say, look, if you're ever trying to make, like I'll give you an example from my domain, if you're ever trying to make a campaign with 100,000 ads, don't do that, because our system is not going to be able to optimize correctly. The right way to do this is X or Y. So I think there are some tools in the toolkit that you can kind of force them to work. Thank you.
Thanks, Ash. Just real quick, let's pretend that I'm another product manager. That's right. Platform, and I come to you and I say, hey, there's this thing that I want to build, and the point that I'm trying to drive towards is, okay, you said sometimes you're a gatekeeper, other times you're letting everything in. What are the questions you would ask me at that point, knowing that your goal is revenue, and I'm thinking that this is also, my goal is also revenue? How would you approach that?
Yeah, great question. So, by the way, the point about block or run fast was more like be intentional. It could be either, just be intentional. So in the case where, let's, I think, take your scenario to say, look, you wanted to build something. You say, hey, I'm going to drive X amount of revenue if you do this things for me. What kind of questions do I ask you, right, to kind of suss out, like, are you just making me do stuff? I work on trust a lot. Like, this is just me personally. And initially, if this is the first time we're working together, I'll ask you questions about, okay, is this really realistic? If you come to me and say, hey, we're going to double X or double Y, like, this is where I think a discussion is warranted. What's the time frame of this goal that you're going to move? Because a lot of times, a lot of products that get built on platforms they're not like users that it's going to get shipped tomorrow and all of a sudden I'm seeing my metrics. This is going to be, okay, it's going to be 2 months before the customer actually starts using it. Depends on, let's say I did not have any of that clear answers. I think what I would try to do is try to assess whether what the thing that you're doing aligns with our broader team strategy. Like, does that fit into something, or is it really out of left field that I have an idea? Like, there are the classes of things like I have an idea and it'll double, like, say, and then there are things like, hey, we have decided we're going to push X to become double, and within that framework, this is what I'm going to do. So I think I would try to actually see if this fits into a model, and if it fits into a model, then the next thing I would do is kind of ask you for, okay, do I have to build the whole thing, or are there kind of steps we can take towards it depending on the investment? And then obviously, if this is something that can be done in a couple of days, I will do it. Right? If you promised me the moon and say a couple of days and I believed you, then I'll do it. But if you said, hey, this is going to take 2 months of effort, then I think the equation changes. Then it's, okay, what is it that, how will it show me the plan for how it will actually get there? Cool. But not in that kind of antagonistic way that I just said, but it's more of a collaborative way.
Thank you.
So
have you ever had a scenario where you had to push back to your senior management when they said that this customer is super important, but then you had your own vision of whatever you were trying to build on the platform, assuming this is super useful for a number of customers, but the senior management comes and says, no, this customer is like P1 right now, we need to get this done. Have you had that scenario? If yes, how did you handle it?
And I'm sure a lot of people get that all the time from their bosses and their bosses' bosses, that this is the most important thing. First of all, in those scenarios, I actually, again, my defaults are I'll give, unless proven otherwise, I'll give that executive leader, whoever, kind of benefit of the doubt. They have information I don't have. They're saying this is important. I will do like true due diligence on whether what they're saying is actually achievable. A lot of times I've actually found is that the intentions are good, right? Obviously. I mean, it's just that they may not understand that this is not possible, or they say something which is an English sentence of, hey, I think we can double, DR revenue in 2 weeks, right? Which, yeah, in some hypothetical scenario you could, but they don't understand, or using X ad or Y type of product, they don't actually have all the details of actually to do something like that. It actually takes 3 months. You'll have to spin up a new team. You really don't have this data. A lot of times senior management will not know that to enable this thing, you need this data, and this takes 3 months. So explaining that, I think, is kind of the right model. There have been instances where I have kind of pushed back hard. Like sometimes you push back hard, sometimes you kind of work with them, but typically the hard thing doesn't work that well, because clearly there is a thing in their mind. So I think understanding. I think the first thing every PM should do when they get an email is, can you explain? Can I sit with you for 15 minutes and actually understand what is it that you're trying? Because a lot of times this was a conversation with some CMO in some room casually over dinner, and all of a sudden I'm about to spin up 10 engineers on this, and you, I think, as a product manager, have to explain that to them. And I think most of the times you'll find that they will be on your side, because that dinner was a week ago. Now there have been more dinners after that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for 1 or 2 more questions.
I think your journey has been really fascinating. You moved from platform to consumer. So tell us more about that. How was this transition from moving from a pure platformish purist to a consumer space and then back to platform? What do you like?
By the way, I've actually mostly always worked on platform. There's one thing I didn't actually say it there, but at Facebook, as part of the Open Graph work that I was doing, what I was actually building was these collection units on the timeline, and they were annoying as hell. These are units that would ask you, rate movies you watched. I don't know if this is before mobile completely took over and all these things went away, but when web was the main client, like, I don't know if you remember, like, Ash is listening to X song on Spotify. Like, there used to be this running feed. So those were all, Open Graph API integrations with third-party consumers. So you could kind of use a third-party app and post to your timeline what you were doing. That was kind of my foray into that's a consumer experience. And my learning there was working with designers. I had never worked with designers. And that was a thing. I had to learn. I had to learn how to speak the language, how not to push them, because I was like, hey, you said Tuesday, it's Tuesday. It's like, no, it's going to be Thursday. I'm like, you said Tuesday. And it's just different, and I appreciate it more. I came from Microsoft working on developer stuff, not having much empathy for designers, and I think I learned a lot. Question.
I think I'm a little confused as to how Snapchat is a platform.
Snapchat is an app. The platform that I work on is the ads platform that essentially is a system that media buyers come into and run ads on Snapchat. And
I understand that part, but in your graph in the beginning, you had Google AdWords on the not platform side, and it seems very similar to Snapchat.
That's right. So Google AdWords has APIs. So this is where, I was saying I might put them here, but somebody might come and there's some team in Google AdWords, if this, this is recorded, right? They'll be like, this is a completely wrong slide, right? Is what they would say, right? So this is where it depends on when you're talking about what's a platform, there is a very high level definition of in software industry what a platform is. And then there is hey, I do day-to-day X, Y, and Z. I'm building these things that other people need. So in that same way, our ad platform also has a lot of APIs. And internally, we call it the ad platform, which makes, our APIs, our actual auction system very similar to, a Google AdWords sort of system. So that's kind of the point I was trying to make.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. I think you'll stick around for a while, won't you?
I'll stick around.
Great. Yes, thank you. I know you can go to the next slide.
Feeling like it's okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, the products accounts notebook.
Thank you very much,
Yeah. And then before you take off, I just have a few housekeeping things. One, you're going to get a survey with the NPS score, but mostly what I'm interested in that is your written feedback, your comments, because that's really the meat of what's working for you and what's not. So I really appreciate that. Our next event is, we have a Zillow member in the room, but we're going to have Scott Parad, CTO of Zillow. He's speaking in September, and then we have a lineup after that. Do visit our website. We're refreshing it completely. So I think in September you'll see a complete refresh, building more community. And then if somebody would like to come up and do a shout out, hey, I'm also hiring, I'm looking, I'd like to build community, now's your chance. The microphone's yours, don't be shy. Anybody? Okay, great. You do.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say hi. I'm currently a software development lead at AT&T. I'm leading a group of Scrum Masters and product owners. I've been in software development working on the back end for about 8 years, so I'm currently looking for a new opportunity, and I really want to move into product. So if anybody knows of any opportunities or mentoring opportunities, let me know.
Great, thank you. And you also get a product. It's the first one who does a shout out, so yeah. Thank you. So now great.
Hi, everybody. I'm Allison. I'm new to Seattle, a week and a half, coming from New York. I've been in the startup world my whole life, and I'm thinking it might be nice to have an actual salaried job working for a company that I don't own. So if you have openings in product, I have built companies, hired people, done the whole entrepreneur thing. So talk to me soon because I'm going to leave to go dancing really quickly.
Thank you. I did bring an extra book just in case, so I'll give it after. Anybody else? Great, come on up.
Hi, I'm Jason. I'm actually only in town for a week, but I'm looking to relocate to Seattle. I'm currently in Las Vegas. I work for SAP as a solution strategist and looking for opportunities, meet new people. I'm here this week to see where I might want to live. So any feedback on that might be good too.
Great, thank you. Thank you, everybody. And then again, we have Zillow has a recruiting team here as well. I imagine Snap's hiring too. And so please, we have another half hour, and we have the room until 8:30. And from here, I can see there's a lot of food and beverages that still await you. And it's probably still in the 80s outside, so I think things are pretty nice here. And just thank you again for coming tonight. Really appreciate your time. And thank you again, Ash. That was fantastic.